The tactical display glowed red, illuminating Captain Juan Park's face as she studied it intently. The UES Defiant floated in the darkness of space, its systems powered down to the minimum required for life support. Their situation was dire. 3 months ago, the Corexian Empire had launched a surprise attack on humanity, conquering Earth and methodically taking over human colonies across the galaxy. Park rubbed her tired eyes. Sleep had become a luxury since the invasion began. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. The Defiant was now the last operational human warship. What had once been a proud fleet of thousands was reduced to this single vessel, a mid-range patrol ship that had been on a routine training mission when the attack came. "Status report," Park said, her voice betraying none of the exhaustion she felt. Around the bridge, her crew worked at their stations. They were young, most of them. This was supposed to be a simple training cruise for the newer officers. Now they were all that stood between humanity and complete subjugation. Lieutenant Do-Yeon Kim, the operations officer, looked up from his console. His uniform was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Hull integrity holding at 62%, Captain. We sealed the breach in Section 4, but the structural damage is extensive." "Weapons?" Park asked. "Main rail cannons are operational, but ammunition is at 37%. Missile bays 1 and 3 are functional, but we're down to our last 14 missiles. Bay 2 is completely destroyed." Park nodded. "And propulsion?" "FTL drive is functional, but the core needs another 6 hours to cool down after our last jump. Sublight engines are at 80% efficiency." The ship had taken heavy damage during their escape from the Battle of Proxima Centauri. They had managed to evacuate several hundred civilians before the colony fell, dropping them off at a hidden outpost before continuing their flight. The Corexians had pursued them relentlessly across 3 star systems before they'd managed to shake their pursuers with a risky blind jump. "Life support is stable," reported Ensign Mina Choi from the environmental station. "But food supplies are running low. At current consumption rates, we have approximately 16 days remaining." Park's expression remained neutral, but inside, her mind raced. 16 days. They needed to find supplies soon, but every populated system was now under Corexian control or surveillance. "Captain," called Communications Officer Sungho Lee, his voice tight with excitement. "I've been working on decrypting the damaged transmission we received before leaving Proxima Centauri. I've finally broken through." The bridge crew fell silent. Any communication from another human source was precious now. "What does it say?" Park asked, trying to keep her hope in check. Lee swallowed. "It's from Admiral Yun. It was sent just before Earth Command fell." He paused, typing commands into his console. "I'm putting it on the main screen." The tactical display flickered, then showed the face of Admiral Yun. The old man looked haggard, with a bleeding cut above his right eye. Explosions sounded in the background. "This message is for any surviving human vessels," the Admiral said, his voice crackling with static. "Earth has fallen. The defense fleet is destroyed. The Corexians are methodically targeting all major human settlements." He coughed, wincing in pain. "If you're receiving this, you're among the few who escaped the initial assault. You are now officially authorized to engage in independent operations against the enemy." Another explosion rocked the Admiral's location, and the image shook. "To any vessel with appropriate clearance, I am transmitting coordinates to Project Helios. Remember Helios. It may be our last hope." The Admiral looked over his shoulder as the sound of weapons fire intensified. "This is Admiral Yun, signing off. Humanity will not die here. Fight on." The transmission ended abruptly. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. "Coordinates received and verified," Lee said quietly. "They point to the Epsilon Eridani system, specifically to the asteroid belt." Park's eyes widened. Project Helios. It was supposed to be a myth, a rumor whispered among high-ranking officers after too many drinks. a contingency plan so secret that most believed it didn't actually exist. If it was real. Captain, Security Chief Jin Yikang spoke up. I served under Admiral Yun for 3 years before being assigned to the Defiant. If he believed in this Helios project, then it's real. Park nodded slowly. Mr. Kim, how far is Epsilon Eridani from our current position? Kim consulted his screen. At maximum FTL, about 4 days' journey, Captain. But he hesitated. The system is likely under Caraxian control now. It's only 12 light years from Earth. Actually, Navigation Officer Hyunjin Ryu interjected. Our latest intelligence before communications went dark indicated that the Caraxians were moving outward from Earth in a systematic pattern. They may not have reached Epsilon Eridani yet. It's not in the direction of any major human settlements. Park considered this information. 4 days to reach a potentially enemy-controlled system, searching for a secret project that might not even exist. But what choice did they have? They were running out of time and options. Lieutenant Ryu, plot a course to Epsilon Eridani, using the asteroid belt as our destination. Park straightened in her chair. Decision made. We'll approach using minimal power, coming in from above the ecliptic to reduce the chance of detection. What about the civilians at the outpost, Captain? Asked Dr. Chuno Park, the ship's chief medical officer and, coincidentally, the captain's younger brother. We promised to return for them. And we will, Park assured him. But first, we need to find something that can give us an edge. If Project Helios is real, it may be our only chance to turn the tide. The crew looked at her with a mixture of hope and doubt. They were tired, scared, but still determined. Prepare the ship, Park ordered. We'll need everything in working order before we make the jump. As the bridge crew returned to their duties with renewed purpose, Park pulled up information about Epsilon Eridani on her personal screen. It was an unremarkable yellow-orange star, slightly smaller than Earth's sun, with a substantial asteroid belt but no habitable planets. A perfect place to hide something you didn't want found. 6 hours later, the FTL drive had cooled sufficiently for another jump. The crew had used the time to conduct repairs, inventory supplies, and prepare for whatever they might find at their destination. FTL drive ready, Captain, reported Engineering Chief Jumsuo over the comm. But I should warn you, we've been pushing it hard. The coolant system is showing signs of stress. We might only have 1 or 2 more jumps before we need major repairs. Understood, Chief, Park acknowledged. We'll make this one count. All departments report ready, Captain, Kim announced. Park took a deep breath. Lieutenant Ryu, engage FTL drive. Take us to Epsilon Eridani. Aye, Captain. FTL engaging in 3, 2, 1. The stars on the view screen stretched into lines as the Defiant leaped into faster-than-light travel. Park watched the blur of light, her mind filled with both doubt and determination. Project Helios might be their salvation, or it might be nothing but a desperate hope. Either way, they were committed now. We're going hunting, she whispered to herself as the ship hurtled through the void, carrying with it perhaps the last free humans in the galaxy. The Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system. Captain Park ordered all systems to minimum power as they drifted toward the asteroid belt, using the natural debris as cover. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, every sensor tuned to detect Caraxian patrols. Anything, Lieutenant Kim? Park asked quietly. Kim studied his console. No signs of Caraxian activity, Captain. The system appears clear. That's unusual, Security Chief Kang remarked. The Caraxians are thorough. They shouldn't have overlooked this system. Park frowned. Unless they did check and found nothing worth their time. Let's hope that's the case. They spent 3 days navigating the dense asteroid field, following the coordinates from Admiral Yun's message. The field was treacherous, with chunks of rock ranging from car-sized to small moon-sized objects spinning in unpredictable patterns. Finally, Navigation Officer Ryu announced, We're approaching the exact coordinates, Captain. Park leaned forward. Visual scan. The main screen showed only floating rocks against the blackness of space. There's nothing here, Weapons Officer Jia Yu said, disappointed. No, Chief Engineer Jiang Kang disagreed, studying her engineering scans. There's something. Look at that asteroid. She pointed to a medium-sized rock tumbling slowly among its neighbors. Its rotation is too perfect, and I'm detecting trace energy signatures. Park studied the innocent-looking asteroid. Bring us closer, Lieutenant Ryu. Careful approach. As the Defiant closed in, Kang continued her scans. Captain, I believe it's artificial, or at least partly artificial. There's a structure inside. When they were within 500 meters of the asteroid, a tight beam transmission suddenly hit their communications array. Incoming message, Communications Officer Lee reported with surprise. Audio only. Let's hear it, Park ordered. A computerized voice filled the bridge. Unidentified vessel. Transmit Project Helios authorization code or retreat immediately. You have 30 seconds to comply. Lee looked up. Captain, the transmission included a frequency for response. Send the coordinates Admiral Yun provided as our authorization, Park instructed. There was a tense wait after Lee transmitted the information. Then, to everyone's amazement, a portion of the asteroid's surface began to shift. Rock panels slid away, revealing a massive entrance bay large enough to accommodate the Defiant. It's a hangar, Ryu whispered in awe. Take us in, Park ordered. Slowly, the Defiant eased into the concealed hangar. As soon as they were inside, the rock panels closed behind them. Interior lights activated automatically, illuminating a vast space carved from the asteroid's interior. Atmosphere is being pumped in, Kim reported. Oxygen-nitrogen mix, Earth standard. Temperature rising to habitable levels. Park stood. Chief Kang, assemble an engineering team. Lieutenant Kang, prepare a security detail. Let's see what Project Helios really is. The boarding party consisted of 12 crew members, including Park, Chief Engineer Kang, Security Chief Kang, and Medical Officer Dr. Park. They exited through the main airlock onto a dusty dock that hadn't seen human presence in years. Chief Engineer Jiang Kang whistled as they entered a cavernous main bay beyond the dock. This place was built to last, she said, running her hand along a control panel that lit up at her touch. And it's been waiting for us. The facility came to life around them, lights activating, systems humming to power, holographic displays blinking into existence. It was clear that the facility had been designed to remain dormant until activated by authorized personnel. Welcome to Project Helios, said a computerized voice. Please identify commanding officer. Captain Park stepped forward. Captain Juan Park, UES Defiant. A holographic display appeared before her, showing Admiral Yun, a recording made years earlier when he was still a younger man. If you are seeing this message, then Earth has fallen, or is at imminent risk, the hologram said. Project Helios was created as humanity's final contingency plan against extinction-level threats. What you see around you represents 15 years of classified research and development. The team spread out, exploring the facility as the recording continued to explain. They found laboratories, manufacturing areas, living quarters, and a central chamber housing something extraordinary, a pulsing core of energy suspended in a containment field. Chief Engineer Kang approached it cautiously, her scanner displaying readings he could barely comprehend. Incredible, she breathed. It's harnessing energy directly from quantum fluctuations in spacetime. The Admiral's hologram continued. Project Helios is not simply a weapon. It's a revolutionary propulsion and energy system that draws power directly from the quantum fabric of space itself. Its potential applications are limitless, from powering entire planets to creating defensive shields that could protect an entire star system. Security Chief Kang frowned. If this technology is so powerful, why wasn't it deployed against the corrections immediately? The hologram seemed to anticipate this question. The system remains experimental. Initial tests revealed that an improperly calibrated Helios device could create cascading quantum disruptions with catastrophic consequences. Further development was needed to ensure safe operation. Dr. Park was examining another terminal. According to these logs, the research team was recalled to Earth for an emergency just 3 months before the correction attack. They'd never returned. Captain Park turned to Chief Engineer Kang. "Can you make sense of this technology?" Kang was already immersed in the technical schematics displayed on multiple screens. "It's advanced, Captain, but the principles are sound. The Helios system creates controlled disturbances in quantum fields, the same fields the Coraxians use for their communications and ship coordination. So it could disrupt their networks," Park asked. "More than that," Kang said, excitement growing in her voice. "Their entire fleet operates on quantum entanglement principles. It's what makes them so deadly and coordinated in battle, every ship connected instantaneously to their central command. With this," she gestured to the pulsing core, "we could potentially disrupt their entire command network." "Could we adapt it to the Defiant?" Park asked. Kang frowned. "It would take significant modifications. The Defiant wasn't designed to channel this kind of energy. We'd need to reconfigure our power systems, strengthen our structural integrity fields, and modify our propulsion systems to handle the quantum fluctuations." "How long?" Park asked simply. "Weeks, minimum," Kang answered honestly. "And we'll need materials we don't have. Specialized alloys, quantum stabilizers, field generators." Park nodded grimly. "Then we'll take them from the enemy." Over the next few days, the crew transferred all essential personnel and equipment from the Defiant to the Helios facility. The asteroid base became their temporary home as they studied the technology and began planning the modifications to their ship. Engineer Kang led the technical efforts, working with her team around the clock. "The good news," she reported to Captain Park after 3 days of intensive work, "is that the facility contains fabrication equipment that can produce many of the components we need. The bad news is that we're missing critical materials, particularly quantum stabilizers and certain rare elements that weren't stockpiled here." "Where can we find these materials?" Park asked. Security Chief Kang, who had been analyzing Coraxian fleet movements from the data they'd gathered, spoke up. "There's a Coraxian mining outpost in the Ta City system. According to our intelligence, they're extracting exactly the type of materials we need. Ta City is firmly in Coraxian-controlled space," Lieutenant Kim pointed out. "Getting there would be risky enough. Stealing from them would be suicide. Not if they don't know we're there," Navigation Officer Ryu said thoughtfully. "The Defiance shuttle was designed for stealth reconnaissance. With some modifications, we could potentially slip in undetected." Captain Park considered their options. The Defiant was in no condition for a direct confrontation with Coraxian forces, but the shuttle might have a chance. "Prepare the shuttle for a covered operation," she decided. "Lieutenant Ryu will pilot, with Security Chief Kang leading the ground team. Your mission will be to infiltrate the mining outpost and secure the materials we need." As preparations for the mission began, Chief Engineer Kang continued her work on integrating the Helios technology with the Defiant. Each day brought new challenges and breakthroughs. The crew, despite their exhaustion, felt a growing sense of hope. For the first time since the Coraxian invasion, they had found something that might give humanity a fighting chance. "This isn't just about survival anymore," Captain Park told her senior officers during an evening briefing. "With this technology, we have a chance to strike back, not just hide and hope for rescue, but to actually fight." The meeting was interrupted by an alert from their perimeter sensors. A Coraxian patrol ship had entered the outer edge of the asteroid field. "Have they detected us?" Park asked sharply. "I don't think so," Kim replied, checking the readings. "They appear to be conducting a standard survey pattern. But if they continue on their current trajectory, they'll pass within scanner range of our position in approximately 6 hours." Park looked at her team. "We need more time here, but we can't risk discovery. Prepare the Defiant for emergency departure. If that patrol gets too close, We'll need to lead them away from the facility." As the crew rushed to their stations, Captain Park stood alone for a moment, staring at the glowing Helios core. So much potential, so much danger. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe they might actually have a chance against the overwhelming might of the Caraxian Empire. "We're coming for you," she whispered, thinking of Earth and all the human worlds under Caraxian control. "And this time, we're bringing the fire." The stolen Caraxian transport ship drifted silently toward the mining outpost. Its hull was marked with Imperial insignia, and its transponder broadcasted standard Caraxian identification codes. To any observer, it was just another supply vessel arriving with provisions and equipment. Inside the cramped cargo hold, Tactical Officer Hyun-woo Choi adjusted his stolen uniform. The heavy gray fabric felt stiff against his skin, and the helmet partially obscured his vision. 5 other crew members were similarly disguised, their human features hidden behind Caraxian military gear. "Remember," Choi whispered to his team, "we need those quantum stabilizers. Nothing else matters. If we're discovered, abort the mission and head to the emergency rendezvous point." Security Chief Jin Hee-kang nodded, checking her weapon one last time. 30 minutes on the ground. Not a second more. The shuttle's comm system crackled to life. "Transport Vessel K-17, you are cleared for landing pad 3. Transmit cargo manifest immediately." Communications Officer Sungho Lee, who had studied Caraxian language patterns extensively, responded in their clipped, formal speech. "Confirmed, mining outpost. Transmitting manifest now." He sent the forged document they had prepared. There was a tense moment of silence before the outpost responded. "Manifest received. Proceed to landing pad 3. The team exchanged relieved glances as their shuttle descended toward the outpost. Built into the side of an asteroid, rich with rare minerals, the mining facility was one of dozens established by the Caraxians in conquered systems. This particular outpost specialized in extracting quantum-stable elements, precisely what they needed for the Helios system. As they landed, Lee monitored the outpost's communications. Standard patrol pattern. 6 guards on the outer perimeter, unknown number inside. "We stick to the plan," Choi reminded them. "Jinhai and I will present as inspectors while the rest of you prepare the cargo hold. Once we identify the stabilizers, we move quickly." The plan worked flawlessly. The outpost supervisor, a mid-rank Caraxian officer, accepted their inspection credentials without question. The Empire's rigid hierarchy was their greatest advantage. Lower-ranking Caraxians rarely questioned orders from above. "These sectors have been underperforming," Choi stated coldly, pointing to random areas on the facility map. "We require access to Storage Block 7. "Of course, Inspector," the supervisor replied nervously. "I can assure you, any production delays are due to equipment limitations, not worker inefficiency." Storage Block 7 contained exactly what they needed: specialized quantum stabilizers designed for Imperial ships. While the supervisor was distracted with Kang's pointed questions about production quotas, Choi discreetly transmitted the storage codes to the rest of the team. Within 20 minutes, the crew had loaded 4 stabilizer units onto their transport. The supervisor, eager to please the supposed inspectors, even provided them with technical documentation. Their shuttle lifted off without incident, carrying the precious cargo back toward their hidden base. Only once they were safely away did the team allow themselves to relax. "We did it," Lee breathed, removing his uncomfortable helmet. "Clean operation, no casualties." Choi nodded, but his expression remained serious. "One successful raid doesn't win a war. We have a lot more supplies to gather." He was right. This raid was just the first of many over the coming weeks. Captain Park coordinated a careful campaign of targeted strikes against Caraxian outposts and supply lines. They stole not only materials but also intelligence, piecing together a picture of Imperial movements and strength. Not every mission went as smoothly as the first. 2 weeks later, a raid on a communications relay station went badly wrong when their shuttle was identified as stolen. Engineer Minju Kwan took a blast to the chest while covering their retreat. They barely escaped, and Quan died despite Dr. Park's best efforts to save him. 3 days after that, they lost the shuttle entirely during a desperate raid on a Correction shipyard. Lieutenant Ji-hoon Nam sacrificed himself by drawing enemy fires so the rest of the team could escape with the needed parts. Back at the asteroid base, the mood grew increasingly tense. Every loss hit the small crew hard. These weren't just colleagues but friends, people they had trained with and relied on. Yet with each raid, the Defiant grew stronger as the Helios system was gradually integrated into its systems. Chief Engineer Juyang Kang worked relentlessly, often going days without proper sleep. The quantum core is stable, she reported to Captain Park after installing the stabilizers. We've successfully linked it to our main power systems. Weapons integration is next. How much longer? Park asked, studying the schematics. 2 weeks, maybe less if our next raid gets us the field amplifiers we need. Park nodded, her expression grim. The Corrections are starting to connect the dots. Each raid increases our risk. They've doubled patrols in 3 sectors already. What neither of them knew was that the Corrections had help from within. Navigation Officer Taewoo Ryu had been secretly communicating with Imperial forces. His family had been captured during the fall of Earth, and the Corrections had promised their safety in exchange for information. For weeks, Ryu had been careful, passing only small bits of information that wouldn't immediately endanger the crew. But as the Helios system neared completion, his Correction handler demanded more. Late one night, while most of the crew slept, Ryu transmitted the coordinates of their asteroid base. The message was brief, encoded using Correction protocols, but not brief enough to escape detection. Security Officer Minha Song was running a routine scan of outgoing communications when she detected the unusual transmission. She immediately alerted Captain Park. The evidence was undeniable. When confronted, Ryu broke down and confessed everything. "They have my children," he pleaded. "They promised they would be spared if I helped." Park's expression was stone. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less," Ryu whispered. A battle group was already stationed in a nearby system. Park ordered Ryu confined to quarters under guard, then called an emergency briefing. "We evacuate immediately," she told her senior officers. "The Helios system isn't fully integrated, but we don't have a choice. Prepare the Defiant for departure." The crew worked frantically, transferring essential equipment from the base to the ship. Engineer Kang supervised the final connections of the Helios core, now installed in what had once been a cargo bay. "It's not ready for full deployment," she warned Captain Park. "The targeting systems aren't calibrated, and the power regulators could overload." "Can it disrupt Correction ships?" Park asked. "Yes, but that's all we need right now." They were still loading supplies when sensor operator Minha Song's voice came over the comm. "Captain to the bridge, emergency." The tension in her voice told Park everything she needed to know. When Park reached the bridge, the main screen showed multiple ships dropping out of FTL at the edge of the asteroid field. 6 Correction cruisers confirmed, Song reported, her voice tight. "Multiple fighter squadrons launching. They'll reach our position in 17 minutes. Park stared at the display, calculating their options. The Defiant was still connected to the base's power systems. Disconnecting hastily could damage the Helios integration. Staying to fight was suicide. "Complete evacuation now," she ordered. "All personnel to battle stations. Disconnect from base power and prepare for immediate departure." As the crew scrambled to obey, Park turned to Weapons Officer Ja Won-yu. "Arm all remaining missiles. Target the base as soon as we're clear." "You look shocked, Captain." "We can't let the Corrections get the Helios research," Park explained grimly. "Everything we couldn't take must be destroyed." The final minutes of evacuation were chaos. Engineers disconnected power couplings while security teams set demolition charges in the labs. The partially installed Helios system hummed ominously as Engineer Kang made final adjustments. "It's as ready as it can be," she told Park. "But I wouldn't recommend using it except as a last resort. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." Park replied, though they both knew it likely would. The Defiant broke free from the base just as the first Correction fighters entered the inner asteroid field. As soon as they reached safe distance, you fired the missiles. The asteroid base erupted in a series of explosions, destroying years of research and any hope of the Corrections discovering the secrets of Project Helios. Evasive maneuvers, Park ordered as enemy fire began to target their position. Take us deeper into the field. The Defiant dove between spinning rocks, using the natural cover to evade the larger Correction cruisers. But the fighters were another matter. Small and agile, they pursued relentlessly. Shields at 64% and dropping, reported Lieutenant Kim as a blast rocked the ship. We can't take much more of this. Park studied the tactical display. The Corrections were hurting them, using their superior numbers to force the Defiant toward their main battle group. Helm, set course 227 Mark 43, she ordered. Maximum thrust. The navigator looked back in alarm. Captain, that leads directly to the densest part of the field. Even with our maneuverability. Do it, Park commanded. As the Defiant accelerated toward what looked like certain destruction, Park turned to Engineer Kang. Prepare to activate the Helios system on my mark. Kang's hands flew over her console. Captain, without proper calibration, I can't guarantee. We're out of options, Chief. Do what you can. The ship twisted and turned through the asteroid field, taking hits from pursuing fighters. Shields weakened further. A large rock loomed directly ahead. Now, Chief, Park shouted. Kang activated the Helios system. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a wave of energy pulsed outward from the ship, distorting space itself. The pursuing Correction fighters suddenly lost formation, their quantum-linked control systems disrupted. Several crashed into asteroids, while others fired wildly, hitting their own ships. The Defiant shuddered as the energy surge stressed its systems, but held together as it cleared the asteroid field. Status of Correction forces, Park demanded. Fighters in disarray, Kim reported with amazement. Cruisers falling back to regroup. The Helios pulse worked, Kang said, though her expression remained worried. But the system has overloaded. We won't be able to use it again without major repairs. Park nodded. They had survived, but barely. And now the Corrections knew not only their location, but also that they possessed technology that could disrupt Imperial systems. Set course for deep space, she ordered. We need distance to make repairs. As the Defiant limped away from the battle, Park gazed at the stars through the view screen. The ship had taken heavy damage. The crew was exhausted, and the Helios system needed extensive work, but they had proven something vital today. The Corrections weren't invincible. For the first time since Earth fell, Captain Park allowed herself a small smile. The hunt for them would intensify now, but so would their resistance. The real war had just begun. The Defiant drifted through empty space, far from any star system. For 3 weeks, the crew had worked tirelessly to repair the damage from their escape at the asteroid base. The ship still bore scars, patched hull breaches, makeshift repairs, and systems running at reduced capacity. But they had survived. In engineering, Chief Jiang Kang hadn't slept properly in days. The Helios system had shown its potential during their escape, but the power surge had damaged critical components. Now, with the stolen parts from their raids, she was finally close to completing the integration. Hand me the phase coupler, she said to her assistant, Ensign Min-O Quan. Quan passed her the tool. Will it work, Chief? Really work? Kang paused, considering her answer. The theory is sound. During our escape, we only managed a partial discharge, and even that disrupted their systems enough to let us get away. With full integration and proper calibration, she tightened a connection. Yes, I believe it will work. On the bridge, Captain Park reviewed intelligence reports. After their escape, Correction patrols had increased across all sectors. Human resistance cells reported harsher crackdowns. The Empire was getting nervous. Lieutenant Kim approached with a datapad. "Captain, we've decoded more of the Caraxian communications we intercepted. They're calling us the Ghost Ship now." Park raised an eyebrow. "And they've assigned a special task force to hunt us down. 12 warships, commanded by Fleet Commander Vec. He's their top military strategist." Park nodded slowly. "They're taking us seriously." "Too seriously," Kim replied. "We can't keep this up much longer. Every safe harbor we've used is now under surveillance. Our supply lines are stretched thin. The resistance cells we've contacted are being systematically identified and eliminated." Park knew he was right. The Defiant couldn't continue hit-and-run tactics forever. Eventually, they would make a mistake, or run out of resources, or simply be overwhelmed by superior numbers. Her comm unit beeped. "Captain to engineering," came Kane's voice. "The Helios integration is complete. I think you'll want to see this." When Park arrived, she found her senior officers already gathered around the central Helios core. The device pulsed with a soft blue light, connected to the ship's systems through a complex network of cables and conduits. "It's beautiful," murmured Dr. Chuno Park, the captain's brother. "And deadly," added Security Chief Ji-hoon Yun. "But is it enough?" Chief Engineer Kang activated a holographic display showing the Helios system's energy output. "We've managed to increase efficiency by 73% compared to our initial tests. The quantum disruptor effect is now sustainable rather than just a single pulse. With this, we could potentially affect Caraxian systems across an entire star system. So we can defend ourselves better," Communications Officer Lee said. "Maybe even take on a small fleet. But that still doesn't solve our long-term problem." Captain Park studied the display, her mind working through possibilities. The Helios system disrupted quantum entanglement, the very technology that gave the Caraxian Empire its military advantage. Their ships, weapons, even their governmental structure relied on instantaneous communication through quantum relays. "What if we don't just defend?" she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "What if we strike at the source?" "The source?" Security Chief Yun asked. "Their central command," Park explained. "The quantum network has to have a hub, a central node that coordinates everything." Engineer Kang's eyes widened. "The Imperial Nexus. It's their command center in the capital system. All quantum communications are routed through it." "Exactly," Park said. "If we could use the Helios system there." "That's suicide," Weapons Officer Jia Wan-yu objected. "The capital system is the most heavily defended location in the Empire. Hundreds of warships, defense platforms, sensor arrays. We wouldn't get within 1,000,000 kilometers before being destroyed." Park smiled grimly. "Not if they invite us in." 2 days later, Captain Park called a meeting of all senior officers in the main briefing room. The holographic display showed a detailed map of the Caraxian capital system, Dominar Prime. "The Caraxians expect us to run or fight conventionally," Park told her assembled officers, pointing to the system's outer defenses. "They don't expect us to attack their nerve center." Security Chief Ji-hoon Yun looked skeptical. "One ship against their entire home fleet." "The Helios system isn't just a weapon," explained Jo Young. "It creates ripples in the quantum field they use for communications. If we target their central command node, those ripples become a tsunami." She activated a simulation showing the potential effect. The Caraxians built their entire civilization around quantum technology. Their ships, weapons, governmental systems, everything is connected through quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication and control. It's their greatest strength, but also their greatest vulnerability. The simulation showed the Helios energy wave spreading outward from a central point, disrupting quantum connections across the entire system. "But we still have to reach the Nexus," Lieutenant Kim pointed out, "and it's in the heart of their capital city, on their homeworld." "That's where this comes in," Park said, bringing up another image, a damaged Caraxian cruiser. The Vizaka. It was Fleet Commander Vec's flagship until it was severely damaged in a battle with resistance forces near Proxima Centauri. According to our intelligence, it's being towed back to Dominar Prime for repairs. Understanding dawned on the officers' faces. We're going to mimic the Vizaka, Communications Officer Lee realized. Exactly, Park confirmed. Chief Kang has analyzed their transponder signatures. With the right modifications, we can make the Defiant appear to be the Vizaka on their sensors. We'll send distress signals, claim our quantum communications were damaged in the battle, and request emergency docking at the Nexus for critical repairs. They'll be suspicious, warned Security Chief Yun. Yes, which is why timing is crucial. Our intelligence suggests the real Vizaka is still 3 weeks from reaching Dominar Prime. We need to arrive before then, while they're still expecting it. What about visual confirmation? Asked Weapons Officer Yu. The Corrections will immediately see we're not one of their ships once we're in visual range. We won't give them the chance, Park replied. We'll time our approach during the shroud. The officers murmured in surprise. The shroud was a rare astronomical event when Dominar Prime passed through a dense dust cloud that orbited its star. For approximately 6 hours, visibility was severely reduced, and sensors were less reliable. The next shroud occurs in 12 days, Park continued. If we leave immediately and push our engines to maximum, we can reach Dominar Prime just as it begins. Engineer Kang looked concerned. Captain, even with the transponder modifications, this plan has a dozen points of potential failure. If they detect us at any stage. I know the risks, Park acknowledged. But consider the alternative. We can continue running until they eventually catch us, or we can strike at their heart while we still have the chance. The room fell silent as the officers contemplated their options. Finally, Dr. Park spoke up. What happens if we succeed? If we disrupt their central command? Their entire command structure collapses, Captain Park answered. Ships lose coordination with each other. Defense systems fail. Governmental control breaks down. In the chaos, resistance cells across occupied territories would have their best chance to rise up. It could end the war, Communications Officer Lee said softly. Or at least turn the tide, Park agreed. Give humanity a fighting chance again. The officers exchanged looks, weighing the near-impossible odds against the potential reward. I believe Chief Kang, and I can modify our transponder systems to mimic the Vizaka, offered Lieutenant Kim. And we already have Coraxian command codes from our previous raids. I can create a convincing distress scenario based on known Coraxian protocols, added Communications Officer Lee. One by one, the officers began to contribute ideas, refining the plan, identifying problems, and proposing solutions. The impossible strategy was taking shape. For the next several days, the crew worked frantically to prepare. Engineer Kang fine-tuned the Helios system for maximum effect. Security teams trained for possible boarding actions. Communications officers practiced Coraxian distress protocols until they could recite them in their sleep. The Defiant's exterior was modified to better resemble a Coraxian vessel from a distance. Its energy signature was adjusted to match Imperial standards. Every detail had to be perfect, because they would only get one chance. On the day of departure, Captain Park made her way through the ship, speaking with crew members, offering encouragement. Many were frightened. They had good reason to be. But all were determined. In engineering, she found Chief Kang making final adjustments to the Helios core. Will it be enough? Park asked quietly. Kang didn't look up from her work. It has to be. At 800 hours, the crew took their positions. The ship hummed with tension as systems came online for what might be their final mission. Captain Park stood on the bridge, looking at her officers, people who had become family during these desperate months. Whatever happened next, they had already accomplished something remarkable. They had defied an empire and kept hope alive. She pressed the ship-wide comm button. All personnel, this is the captain, Park announced. What we attempt today will determine the future of our species. Remember what we fight for. She paused, thinking of Earth, of conquered colonies, of families separated and suffering under Coraxian rule. Each of you volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. You've shown courage beyond measure, and it has been the honor of my life to serve with you." Her voice grew stronger. "We carry with us the hopes of every human living under Imperial rule. Today, we bring the fight to the enemy's doorstep." She nodded to Navigation Officer Hyunjin Ryu, who had taken over after Taewoo's betrayal. "Set course for Dominar Prime. Maximum speed." As the Defiant leaped into FTL, Park gazed at the streaking stars. One ship against an empire. Impossible odds. But sometimes, she thought, the impossible was exactly what was needed. The Defiant emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Dominar system. From this distance, the Correxian homeworld was merely a bright point of light. Captain Park stood on the bridge, her expression calm despite the tension that gripped the entire crew. "Status report," she ordered. "All systems functioning within parameters." Lieutenant Kim responded. "Transponder modification is active and broadcasting Visaka identification codes." "Any response from Correxian patrols?" Park asked. Communications Officer Lee listened intently to his earpiece. "Standard automated acknowledgement. They're receiving our signal as the Visaka." The first hurdle cleared. Park nodded to Navigation Officer Hyunjin Ryu. "Take us in, 1/4 impulse. Maintain the approach vector we calculated." The Defiant moved slowly toward the Correxian homeworld, just as a damaged Imperial vessel would. Every minute brought them closer to the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. Defense platforms orbited at regular intervals. Patrol ships moved in precise formations, and ahead, barely visible at this distance, loomed the massive Imperial fleet. "Incoming transmission," Lee announced, tension evident in his voice. "They're requesting verification codes." This was expected. Park nodded to Lee, who transmitted the codes they had stolen during their raids. Another tense minute passed before Lee reported. "Codes accepted. They're instructing us to maintain current course to the outer defense perimeter." Park allowed herself a small breath of relief. The Correxians' rigid adherence to protocol was working in their favor. So far, no one had questioned why the Visaka was arriving weeks ahead of schedule. As they approached the outer defense ring, sensors detected a change in the system's star. A dense cloud of cosmic dust was beginning to pass between the star and its planets. "The shroud is starting," reported Sensor Officer Minha Song. "Visibility dropping to 78% of normal. Correxian sensor arrays are adjusting frequencies to compensate." "Now," Park ordered, "send the distress signal." Communications Officer Lee activated the prepared message, his voice perfectly mimicking Correxian speech patterns. "Imperial Command. This is the Visaka. We have suffered critical damage to our propulsion systems, requesting emergency clearance to the Nexus for repair. Quantum communication relays non-functional. Require direct docking." The response came quickly. "Visaka, maintain course. Escort vessels will guide you to secondary repair facility." Lee looked at Park in alarm. The secondary facility wasn't close enough to the Nexus for their plan to work. "Increase reactor radiation leakage signature," Park ordered calmly. "Make it look like we're at risk of core breach." Engineer Kang adjusted the ship's energy emissions. Radiation signature now reading at dangerous levels. Any Correxian sensors should detect it as an imminent threat. Lee transmitted again, this time with greater urgency. "Imperial Command. Reactor containment failing. Secondary facility too distant. Request immediate Nexus docking authorization. Risk of catastrophic detonation. Repeat, reactor containment failing." There was a longer pause this time. Park could imagine the Correxian commanders weighing their options. A reactor breach in the secondary facility would cause significant damage. But allowing a compromised vessel near the Nexus carried its own risks. Finally, the response came. "Visaka, emergency authorization granted. Proceed directly to Nexus Docking Bay 4. Repair teams standing by. Maintain minimal power to avoid breach." The bridge crew exchanged tense glances. They were in. "The shroud is now at 65% density," reported Song. "Visibility continues to decrease. Correction ships are switching to quantum-linked guidance. Perfect timing. As the dust cloud thickened, visual identification became less reliable. The Corrections would depend more heavily on their quantum network, the very system the Helios device was designed to disrupt. The Defiant moved deeper into the Correction defenses, passing between massive dreadnoughts. Up close, the Imperial ships were intimidating. Each one dwarfed their vessel by orders of magnitude. A single battleship could obliterate the Defiant with ease. As they approached the innermost defense ring, a squadron of Correction fighters moved to escort them. "They're scanning us more thoroughly," warned Song. "The disguise won't hold up to close inspection." "We're almost in position," Park said steadily. "Weapons status." "All systems ready," replied Weapons Officer Jawanyu. Target locked on the Quantum Relay Station. The Quantum Relay Station was their first objective. A massive satellite orbiting just above the Nexus. It coordinated the quantum entanglement network for the entire system. "Escort leader is requesting visual confirmation," Lee reported urgently. "They want us to activate external cameras." Park's eyes narrowed. "They're getting suspicious. We're out of time. All hands, battle stations. Execute primary attack plan." The Defiant suddenly accelerated, breaking formation with its escorts. Before the Correction fighters could react, Yu fired a concentrated burst at the relay station. The blast struck with precision, causing a cascade of explosions across the station's surface. "Direct hit," Yu called out. "Relay station damage." Immediately, alarms blared throughout the Correction fleet. The Defiant's transponder shifted back to human configuration, revealing their true identity. "All Correction vessels are moving to intercept," Song reported as Imperial ships turned toward them. "Evasive maneuvers," Park ordered. "Get us to the Nexus." The Defiant screamed through space, weaving between massive Imperial dreadnoughts. Behind them, chaos erupted as their first strike at the Quantum Relay Station took effect. Some Correction ships lost navigational control, their systems confused by the partial disruption of the quantum network. "Their coordination is already faltering," noted Intelligence Officer Minjo Wong. "The relay station damage is affecting their ability to communicate." But the Corrections adapted quickly. Secondary systems activated, and the Imperial fleet began to regroup. Weapons fire streaked past the Defiant, some shots hitting their shields. "Shields at 82%, reported Kim, taking fire from multiple directions. "Continue on course," Park commanded. "Chief Kang, prepare the Helios system for full activation." In engineering, Chief Engineer Juyang Kang worked frantically at the Helios controls. The core pulsed with increasing brightness as she channeled more power to it. "Helios system at maximum output," reported Juyang, her hands dancing across controls that glowed with unnatural light. "Quantum cascade initiating." The Defiant shuddered as energy began to build within the Helios core. A visible wave rippled outward from the ship, subtle at first, but growing in intensity. When it reached the nearest Correction vessels, their systems flickered and faltered. On the bridge, Captain Park watched as the Imperial fleet began to falter. Ships lost coordination, collided with one another, or fired on friendly vessels as their command systems failed. "Their entire military operates on absolute authority from the top down," explained Intelligence Officer Minjo Wong. "Without central command, they have no protocols for independent action." A massive explosion rocked the Defiant as a direct hit struck their port side. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Kim shouted. "Emergency force fields activated." "Shields down to 47%, Yu added grimly. The Defiant took punishing hits, but pressed forward into the heart of the dying empire. The Helios system's energy signature grew, connecting to each Imperial vessel it passed, spreading like a virus through their network. "We need to get closer to the Nexus," Park insisted. "The effect isn't strong enough yet." Another hit rocked the ship. A control panel exploded, sending sparks across the bridge. A crewman cried out in pain. "Shields at 23%, Kim reported, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. One more direct hit, and we're finished. The massive structure of the Nexus now filled their view screen, a sprawling space station that served as the Coraxian Empire's central command center. Within its walls, the Emperor and Imperial High Command coordinated their vast dominion. Distance to optimal firing position, Park asked, gripping her chair as the ship shook. 8,000 kilometers, Ryu replied. We're still too far for maximum effect. A Coraxian battleship moved to intercept them, its massive weapons powering up for a killing blow. Divert all non-essential power to shields, Park ordered. Prepare for impact. The battleship fired, its energy weapons striking the Defiant with devastating force. The lights flickered, systems failed, and for a moment it seemed like the mission had failed. But the shields held, barely. Shields at 4%, Kim reported in disbelief. Engineering reports multiple systems failing. But we're still moving, Park noted with grim determination. Distance to target. 5,000 kilometers in closing, Ryu answered. The Defiant limped toward the Nexus, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. Around them, the Imperial fleet was in growing disarray as the Helios disruption continued to spread. As the Imperial Palace Station came into view, Park gave her final order: activate Helios Prime. In engineering, Chief Kang engaged the final sequence. The Helios core flared with brilliant light, and for a moment, every system on the Defiant shut down as all power was channeled into the device. A wave of energy erupted from the Defiant, not destroying ships but severing their integrated systems. The quantum field that linked every aspect of Coraxian technology fluctuated and then collapsed entirely. On the Nexus, lights flickered and died. Defense systems shut down. Communication ceased. The rigid Imperial hierarchy, unable to adapt to sudden autonomy, collapsed into disorder. Ships drifted aimlessly or fired at random targets. On planets throughout Coraxian space, the iron grip of Imperial control suddenly vanished. On the Defiant's damaged bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence as the mighty Empire crumbled before their eyes. It worked, whispered Communications Officer Lee. It actually worked. Power slowly returned to the Defiant's systems as the Helios device powered down. Damage reports flooded in from all decks. The ship was severely crippled, but somehow still intact. Captain, called Lee suddenly, I'm receiving transmissions, thousands of them. From Earth, from the colonies. Human resistance groups are rising up everywhere. Park allowed herself a small smile. Send a message to all human frequencies. Tell them the Coraxian command structure has fallen. The time to fight back is now. As the Defiant drifted near the powerless Nexus, Coraxian ships began to retreat in confusion or surrender to suddenly emboldened resistance forces. Without their quantum network, without central command, the once invincible Empire had no way to coordinate a response. Captain Park stood on her damaged bridge, watching the beginning of the Empire's collapse. One ship against an entire civilization, and somehow they had won. Start repairs, she ordered quietly. There's still work to be done. The liberation of humanity had begun, and it had started with a single ship that refused to surrender.